Trump will mark 100 days in office with an event in Michigan. White House officials say the event will focus on what they call a monumental first 100 days. Well, you're not too wrong about that, thanks in part to Trump's flurry of executive orders. But those orders have been met with dozens of legal challenges from Democrat-led states, including Michigan. Just on Friday, Michigan joined 18 other states in suing the Trump administration over its threat to withhold funding from districts with certain diversity programs in their public schools. Joining us now to talk about that, Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel.
General Nessel, so good to have you at the table. In that lawsuit, you note that Trump's directives put more than $18.7 billion of federal funding for education at risk. States that the Trump administration has, quote, repeatedly failed to define the conduct that they seek to punish or prohibit, or what constitutes illegal DEI. Talk me through this lawsuit.
Well, I mean, it's the same problem that we see on a lot of these executive orders that have been drafted by the Trump administration, signed by President Trump. There's seemingly no rhyme or reason. There's certainly no legal definition. Many of them, to me, sound as though they've been drafted by a psychotic toddler. I mean, these are not the kinds of words or language that we normally see written in a legal document. And there's no way, even if one wanted to comply, even if it was legal and it did not violate state law and federal law to comply, there's really no way to know if you're in compliance or not. And to talk about defunding our schools in this manner, knowing that there's really nothing that you're ever going to be able to do correctly. And I look at things like Columbia University and their attempts at appeasement, or I look at the law firms that, signed these agreements saying, okay, we're going to do what you want, and that way we'll be in the clear, we're not going to be punished. There is no really getting out of it, because when you, as I guess Winston Churchill used to say, when you feed the crocodile hoping that you'll get eaten last, you're still get eaten eventually. I mean, there's no way to ensure that you are eventually not going to be punished by this administration, because nothing will ever be good enough for them.
That is so true. I just help me understand how this administration has been so successful at claiming something is illegal that is not written into any law in the country, and that's diversity, equity, and inclusion as a thing. And so now we find ourselves, to your point, witnessing how that's been sort of the cudgel to use against other institutions, universities, now our museums here in the nation's capital and around the country. What, from a legal standpoint, how do you go in and make the case that the administration is sort of making up law and giving weight to something that doesn't exist in the form that they claim it does, as a thing written down, on this paragraph, this DEI paragraph, the law says this. That's not the case here. It's an idea. It's something that we aspire to diversity. We aspire to some level of inclusion and equity. How do we now find ourselves where that's illegal?
Yeah, I mean, it's just years of disinformation, misinformation, much of it, I think, coming from social media. Nothing that's based in fact, right? I mean, is teaching the Civil War illegal DEI? Is teaching about Jim Crow or Brown v. Board of Education? Is that illegal DEI? Clearly it's not, But it's just this long-time effort, I guess, to poison people against, honestly, just learning the truth. And that's why in the very beginning, one of the executive orders that was drafted really was an effort to go after teachers and to threaten them with prosecution for what they called radical indoctrination. And I right away put something out to the teachers of the state of Michigan and just said, this is ridiculous. You don't make, first of all, you make law through an executive order. That's not how you create a criminal statute. You still have to involve something called Congress for federal laws. You would need a state legislature and a governor for a state law. But it's the threat, right? It's the threat that it really scares people and gets, whether it's teachers, whether it's people in universities, whether it's recipients of all kinds of different grants at colleges, just scared out of their mind, and they don't know what to do because they don't know what the punishment is going to be. And that's why I think it's so important that as state AGs that we are fighting back, not just on behalf of the states that we represent, but on behalf of the people who live in the states that we represent, so that they know these are illegal orders. And you know what? The courts have, in large part, agreed with us.
I mean, I think it is very important that the state attorney generals have been pushing back because, you know, when the president sits in a meeting and says, well, we are the law, I think the attorney generals pushing back, underscoring, no, sir, you are not the law. We are a country of laws, not of men. Can we take a turn and ask you about some stuff that's been going on in Michigan? Earlier this, all my weeks come together, it was earlier this week. Last week.
Sunday.
Oh, it's Sunday. There we go.
There he is.
Last week, there were raids that were executed in about 3 different jurisdictions in Michigan, specifically related to a vandalism investigation. And I just want to read on that we have on the information on this. The homes of pro-Palestinian protesters were raided in a multi-jurisdictional vandalism investigation. It was FBI along with local and state law enforcement. They were involved in the raids. Your office clarified that immigration officers were not involved and all involved were American citizens. Your office said that the searches did not pertain to on-campus protest activity, but a multi-jurisdictional investigation into vandalism. I just have to ask because when I first read about this, it made me wonder that if we were not talking about pro-Palestinian activity, would these raids have been executed? So what happened here?
Well, first of all, you're calling them raids, and I understand that, but this is the legal execution of search warrants where you have a court of law that has found that there's probable cause to believe that there's evidence of a crime in these various different homes in which the search warrants were executed. It really bothered me, by the way, to see people talk about like no-knock raids. These were like hours-long negotiations trying to get people to open the doors, trying to get landlords to open the doors. And the way that law enforcement works is that if you refuse to voluntarily cooperate and open a door, law enforcement doesn't just leave.
They doesn't leave.
They don't just walk away. But
why were the search warrants issued? For what? I guess for vandalism, there are warrants and you're going to folks' homes and people are knocking out the doors. That's the question. So is it like, what was the reason?
Yeah, we are talking about, again, over a dozen locations, including the Jewish Federation of Detroit, including multiple elected officials' homes, where you had in many cases, it wasn't just that you had, vandalism that, again, is terrifying in nature, right? We're talking about people's homes that were defaced, people's cars that were defaced, people who had their children's windows broken in, and then to have canisters full of noxious chemicals thrown into those rooms in the middle of the night. And this went on over and over and over in municipalities all around southeastern Michigan. And you know what? You can believe in a cause very much. And I encourage people, absolutely. I have been a part over the course of many decades of peaceful, lawful protests. But what you cannot do is commit crimes. And, to say to these people, well, these are individuals who may believe very much in a particular cause. And so in furtherance of that cause, they can do literally anything they want, including come to your home in the middle of the night and destroy your property. And this had been going on for over a year. And at a certain point, when many different jurisdictions came together and discovered who we believed the perpetrators of those crimes were, we did what we do in all crimes, right? We obtained legal search warrants, and we executed those search warrants. And those cases will likely proceed based on the evidence that was discovered. But what we can't do is say, and I don't care what your cause is, whether it's reproductive rights, whether it's LGBTQ rights, whether it's, rights for African Americans, whatever it is, you can't commit crimes in furtherance of that. And you can't terrorize people. You can't terrorize entire communities based on that. And in my opinion, many of the different types of graffiti was meant to inspire fear, in not just individuals, but in entire communities. And that's why you attack, a nonprofit like the Jewish Federation, right? It's my job. I'm the top law enforcement official in the state, and I can't walk away from these things. And I can't say, well, if I agree with your cause or whether I disagree with your cause, it doesn't matter. It's my job to enforce the law, and that is exactly what we did. And we don't prosecute people who are just exercising their First Amendment, again, peacefully and lawfully. But if you're going to break the law, then you have to be held accountable. And I think it's an important message going forward, because I think that peaceful protesting is going to be such a critically important part of fighting back against the Trump regime that is sliding very quickly into a full-blown autocracy. So we need people to be in the streets. We need people to be exercising their First Amendment rights and to demonstrating and telling the Trump administration we are not okay with this.
If
but
you're going to commit a crime.
But we have to do it lawfully, and we have to do it in a way where we're not attacking police officers, and we have to do it in a way where we are showing that we are on the right side, but we're not hurting people, we're not attacking property, because I don't think that's going to win anybody over.
General Nessel, Michigan Attorney General.